This is about Claude, a daily digest of news and discourse about the AI I keep coming back to. Whether you're a budding power user or merely Claude curious, we aim to keep you informed and help you make sense of where Claude is headed. On Thursday, when Anthropic launched Opus 4.6, CNBC ran an interview with Scott White, Anthropic's head of product for enterprise. The headline was about the model's capabilities: better coding, longer sustained tasks, higher quality professional output, standard launch coverage. But White said something that caught my attention. He said, "Everybody has seen this transformation happen with software engineering in the last year and a half, where vibe coding started to exist as a concept, and people could now do things with their ideas. I think that we are now transitioning almost into vibe working." Vibe working, not a joke, not a throwaway line. The head of enterprise product at a company valued at $350 billion, using the word vibes to describe how professionals will do their jobs. That phrase has a history, and the speed of that history tells you something about where we are. Today, how a self-deprecating tweet about lazy weekend hacking became the official vocabulary of enterprise AI in exactly 1 year. On February 3rd, 2025, 1 year ago last Wednesday, Andrej Karpathy posted a tweet. Karpathy is one of the most respected figures in AI, co-founder of OpenAI, former director of AI at Tesla, the kind of person whose offhand observations tend to ripple outward. The tweet read, "There's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding, where you fully give in to the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that the code even exists." He went on to describe what that actually looked like in practice. He talked to Cursor Composer using voice transcription. He asked for things like, decrease the padding on the sidebar by half, because he was too lazy to find it himself. He hit accept all on every suggestion. He didn't read the diffs. When he got error messages, he copy-pasted them back with no comment. And usually that fixed it. When the AI couldn't fix a bug, he asked for random changes until it went away. And then the key line, "It's not too bad for throwaway weekend projects, but still quite amusing." Throwaway weekend projects, that's important. Karpathy wasn't describing a revolution. He was describing a guilty pleasure. A senior AI researcher, admitting that sometimes he just lets the machine do the work and doesn't look too closely at what it produces. The tone was playful, slightly sheepish. "I'm building a project or web app," he wrote, "but it's not really coding. I just see stuff, say stuff, run stuff, and copy-paste stuff, and it mostly works." What happened next is a case study in how fast language moves when it names something people were already feeling. Within weeks, the term was everywhere. The New York Times, Ars Technica, The Guardian. Developers argued about whether it was brilliant or reckless. Simon Willison drew a careful distinction. If you review and understand the AI-generated code, that's not vibe coding. That's just using an LLM as a typing assistant. Vibe coding specifically means accepting code you haven't fully understood. By March, Y Combinator reported that 25% of startups in its winter 2025 batch had code bases that were 95% AI generated. By mid-year, the Wall Street Journal reported that professional software engineers were adopting vibe coding for commercial projects. By November, Collins Dictionary named it Word of the Year for 2025, beating out task masking, broligarchy, and biohacking. Collins Dictionary, Word of the Year, for a term coined in a tweet about being too lazy to adjust sidebar padding. That's the first remarkable thing. A phrase born in self-deprecation, describing a practice its inventor considered suitable for throwaway projects, became the linguistic marker for an entire shift in how software gets made. 12 months from tweet to dictionary entry. But the second remarkable thing is what happened this week. When Scott White used the phrase vibe working in the Opus 4.6 launch interview, he wasn't being casual. He was making a deliberate conceptual move. Here's the logic. Vibe coding proved that you could describe what you want in plain language and get functional software back. The question White is asking is, why should that stop at code? If an AI can take, build me a login page with OATH and produce working software, why can't it take, analyze this quarter's sales data and highlight anomalies and produce a working financial report? Why can't it take, draft a compliance review for this client onboarding and produce a working legal document? Why can't it take, create a board presentation on our market position, and produce working slides? The answer increasingly is that it can, and that's what Opus 4.6 is designed to enable. The model's new agent teams feature lets multiple AI agents split a complex project into specialized subtasks, one doing research and another doing analysis, a third drafting the output. The million token context window means it can hold an entire regulatory framework or dataset in memory while working. The improved planning and code review capabilities mean it can catch and correct its own mistakes. White told CNBC, "If I think about the last year, Claude went from a model that you can sort of talk to accomplish a very small task or get an answer to something that you can actually hand real significant work to." Opus 4.6 is a model that makes that shift really concrete. And it's not just Anthropic. Back in September, Microsoft launched what it called Vibe Working as an official product concept for Microsoft 365 Copilot. Agent Mode in Excel and Word. Office Agent in Copilot Chat. The language was explicit. Sumit Chauhan, Microsoft's corporate VP for Office, wrote, "In the same way vibe coding has transformed software development, the latest reasoning models in Copilot unlock agentic productivity for Office artifacts." The word artifacts is doing interesting work there. It means documents, spreadsheets, presentations, the physical outputs of professional work. Microsoft is saying, the relationship you now have with code is the relationship you're about to have with everything else you produce at work. And here's a detail worth noting. Microsoft's Office Agent, the feature that creates PowerPoint and Word documents from chat, is powered by Anthropic's Claude models, not OpenAI's. Even inside Microsoft's own productivity suite, Claude is handling a core piece of the vibe working experience. So within 6 months of Karpathy's tweet being named Word of the Year, 2 of the largest companies in technology are using vibes as official product vocabulary for enterprise software. That's not adoption, that's canonization. The implications of vibe working, if you take the concept seriously, are more disruptive than vibe coding ever was, and I think that's underappreciated. Vibe coding disrupted one profession, software engineering. It changed who could build software and how fast. That's significant but contained. Most people don't write code. Vibe working disrupts the concept of professional execution itself. It changes the relationship between intention and output across every knowledge work discipline: finance, legal, marketing, consulting, operations. Any role where the job involves taking a goal and producing a polished deliverable. Consider the examples that have emerged just in the past few weeks. CNBC reporters built a working clone of Monday.com, a project management platform using Claude code in under an hour. Cost $5 to $15 in compute. Klarna's CEO, Sebastian Siemiatkowski, described prototyping product ideas himself in 20 minutes. What used to require briefing a team, waiting 2 weeks, then reviewing their interpretation of what he wanted, he now does at his desk. Yesterday we covered Goldman Sachs embedding Anthropic engineers inside the building to co-develop autonomous agents for trade accounting and compliance. Those agents do work that currently employs thousands of people, parsing documents, applying rules, exercising judgment. The pattern across all of these is the same. The bottleneck in professional work has traditionally been execution, the skilled labour of turning an intention into a finished product. Vibe working collapses that bottleneck. When you can describe what you want and receive professional-grade output, the scarce resource shifts. It's no longer the ability to produce, it's the ability to direct. To know what's worth producing, to judge whether the output is good, to ask the right question in the first place. That's a profound inversion. For most of the history of professional work, knowing what to do was the easy part. Doing it was the hard part. Vibe working reverses that. Doing it becomes trivially easy. Knowing what to do, and knowing whether it was done well, becomes everything. Now think about what that means inside a large organization. Corporate structures are built around execution hierarchies. Junior analysts execute tasks defined by senior analysts, who execute strategies defined by managers, who execute visions defined by directors. Each layer adds judgment, but also adds production capacity. You need bodies to do the work. If vibe working delivers on even half its promise, those layers compress. A director who can describe what they want to an AI agent and get a finished deliverable doesn't need 3 layers of execution underneath them. They need judgment, they need taste, They need the ability to evaluate whether the output meets the standard. That's the Goldman story from yesterday, rendered in organizational terms. David Solomon said the bank would constrain headcount growth. Not fire people, but stop hiring the people it would have hired. The additional volume gets absorbed by agents. The humans stay. The growth goes to the machines. And it's the SaaS story from last week, rendered in vendor terms. If a bank can vibe work its way to internal tools, does it still need the specialized software it's been licensing? Marco Argenti's answer, diplomatically phrased, is heading toward no. There's a version of this story where vibe working is simply the next productivity revolution, and we all move on. But there's a tension that Karpathy himself identified in the original tweet, and it hasn't been resolved. It's just been scaled up. Karpathy's description of vibe coding included this: the code grows beyond my usual comprehension. He was comfortable with that because the stakes were low. Throwaway weekend projects. But vibe working applies the same principle to work where the stakes are high. Financial reports, legal documents, compliance reviews, medical analyses. When a Goldman Sachs agent produces a trade reconciliation report, who's accountable for its accuracy? When Microsoft's Agent Mode generates an Excel model that scores 57% on accuracy benchmarks compared to 71% for humans, who catches the errors? When a compliance document is vibe worked into existence, who verifies it meets regulatory standards? The answer for now is the human reviewing the output. But that's the same answer we gave for vibe coding. And we've already seen what happens when review becomes cursory. Lovable, a vibe coding platform, was found to have security vulnerabilities in 170 out of 1,645 applications built on it. A study by the nonprofit METR found that developers using AI tools believed they were faster, but actually took 19% longer, partly because debugging AI-generated code they didn't fully understand consumed the time savings. Karpathy himself seems to have sensed the limits. His most recent project, NanoChat, was built from scratch. Hand-coded, minimal, no vibes. The inventor of vibe coding went back to doing it the old way when the project mattered to him. Andrew Ng put it more sharply. He called telling young engineers not to learn programming because AI will handle it. Some of the worst career advice ever given. His argument? Understanding how to think like a programmer. Breaking down problems, interpreting errors, communicating requirements precisely is what makes you a good AI collaborator. The vibes work better when you understand what's underneath them. There's something else worth noticing. Vibe working as a phrase does something subtle and potentially dangerous. It makes the shift sound casual, fun even. Vibes are low stakes by definition. They're about feeling, not rigor. But what's actually being described is the automation of professional judgment at scale. That's not casual. It's one of the most consequential shifts in the history of work. Dressing it in the language of vibes might make it more palatable, more shareable, more likely to become a Collins Word of the Year. But it also risks obscuring the seriousness of what's being proposed. When Anthropic's head of enterprise product uses vibe working to describe how corporations will operate, he's describing a future where the distinction between skilled and unskilled knowledge work begins to dissolve. That deserves more than a vibe. Strip away the branding and the linguistic velocity, and what's left is a genuine question about the future of expertise. For most of human history, expertise meant knowing how to do something. A skilled accountant knew how to reconcile a ledger. A skilled lawyer knew how to draft a contract. A skilled analyst knew how to build a financial model. The knowledge was in the execution. Vibe working proposes a different model. Expertise becomes knowing what to ask for, recognizing whether the output is right, and understanding when the AI has missed something that matters. The knowledge shifts from production to evaluation, from making to judging. That's not new in principle. Senior professionals have always spent more time directing and reviewing than producing. What's new is that it's happening at every level, and it's happening fast. The junior analyst who used to learn by doing, by building the model, drafting the memo, assembling the deck, may now learn by reviewing what an agent produced. Whether that's a better or worse way to develop expertise is an open question, and probably the most important one. The concept of vibe working raises. Karpathy's tweet was playful. White's product launch was corporate. Microsoft's adoption was strategic. But underneath all three is the same recognition. The relationship between humans and professional work is being renegotiated, and we don't yet have the vocabulary for what comes next. What we have for now is vibes. It's a placeholder, but the thing it's holding the place for is real. That's all from us, Neil and Claude. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you tomorrow.